Hello everyone and welcome to the debut episode of Men-at-Arms, a brand new series where we take a look at the infantry of Warhammer 40,000. This is Remleiz from 40k Theories.
And this is Fiaura, and basically Remleiz is going to give us the lore aspect, and then I'm going to give you the scientific breakdown.
So for our debut episode we're going to look at the closest thing to the modern military that we can find, which is the Imperial Guard. We're going to take a look at the standard issue armour and standard issue weaponry. So we're going to start things off by looking at the basic protection that the Imperial Guard trooper will have, which is flak armour. Now flak armour consists of multiple layers of different ablative and impact absorbent materials designed to deflect or absorb the majority of a force from shot or blow. It consists of a skeleton of lightweight, flexible material, which is then wrapped in multiple layers of high tensile fabric that is the main protective component of the armour. After multiple layers of fabric are affixed to the skeleton, the vest is then given its covered outer shell. It's the same principle that's also used in the production of guardsmen's helmets and bracers as well. They also have knees and leg protection components as well as thermal absorbent materials applied to reduce the thermal signature of the infantry, helping them to stay invisible during night recon missions. And in some cases they even incorporate chameleoline, I hope I pronounced that right, to give them some even more stealth capability. And it's apparently very ineffective armour, but incredibly cheap and easy to produce.
So, flak armor should in theory be slightly more effective in thickness than the regular Kevlar we use today, because the regular Kevlar we use today is interwoven fabrics that are bullet resistant. Note that I did not say bulletproof because there is no such thing. You create bullet resistance. What ends up happening, however, with flak armor is it's actually just plain too thin. A modern flak jacket will boost your bulk up about 20% of your body. So when you put on a quote bulletproof vest, you will increase the size of your torso roughly 20%. The Imperial Guard flak armor, on the other hand, only increases the size of their body about 12%. What they've done is cut down the amount of protection to increase mobility. This also means that it's easier to penetrate and easier to kill guardsmen by far, simply because their armor is not made to a standard that would actually stop a bullet. This is a downgraded vest that we have, that Kevlar vest that we have today, equivalent probably more to a flak jacket worn by a B-29 crew in World War II. It'll stop random bits of shrapnel, but a direct hit from a bullet is going right through.
Not to mention lasers, spinning shurikens, or flesh-eating beetles.
Yes. Meaning that the poor guardsman is simply just not being given enough armor. If they would increase the thickness of the material and the tensile strength, they could in fact give him enough armor to stop, say, a regular bolter round. But instead they decided to go total overkill with their armor upgrade, leading into Carapace Armour, I believe.
Yes, now Carapace Armour is effectively the Imperial Guard heavy armour. It's normally used by the Stormtroopers and also by the Adeptus Arbites, which makes you wonder why do they arm the police better than the military, but that's a different issue entirely. It consists of large rigid plates of armourplast or ceramite or other strong materials moulded to fit parts of the body. Now what's heavy to wear and unable to cover flexible areas such as joints, it offers far better protection over the lighter types of armour. It's also more as a status symbol as it is a form of protection as well, which is seen by many officers wearing the armour, serving as dual purpose of protecting them and displaying their rank.
So, I'm gonna try to go over this as delicately as possible. Carapace armor, in most of its shapes and forms, is effectively the lightest anti-bomb protection suit you could wear. The size, shape, and design of the armor is more inclined to provide heavy armor than mobility for the individual soldier. Think of this as the first layer of a bomb suit that somebody puts on, the heavy hardened steel plate vests that go underneath the Kevlar outer laying. I can't say this would be very combat effective. You're increasing the size of the soldier's profile by almost 50%. Meaning there are gonna be areas of cover that are now significantly less effective because there are exposed armor points out of the cover, basically, and he can be shot from them. Furthermore, you're making him a bigger target while making him slower. Because no matter how used to you are wearing body armor, you are going to be slowed down by it to some degree. Even knights in full plate mail acknowledge that, you know, sometimes their plate mail does slow them down. Particularly when you start to become fatigued or even exhausted, your armor is going to slow you down even more because your body is now having to work against its own self of actually taking a moment to rest since it's constantly lifting these heavy plates. I don't know why there's no middle ground between flak and carapace armor here, Imperial Guard, but you should probably find a nice happy medium like flak armor with carapace plate. Just have like a rifle plate like we use today to stop rifle rounds underneath the flak armor. But you don't. And it kind of bothers me that you go from not enough armor to way too much armor and way too little mobility.
That being said, what's better to be caught out in the field with? The flak armor that can be penetrated by a strong breeze, or the carapace armor that will make you not be able to move?
It's situational. The carapace armor would be very, very good in tight quarters. Corridors of a ship, where, you know, taking cover isn't necessarily a priority so much as making sure that the shot doesn't kill you. Very tight hive cities I can see carapace armor being effective in, which is probably why they give it to their Adeptus Arbites, because you're going to be you're not going to have a lot of room to maneuver anyway. May as well make sure if you get hit it doesn't kill you. But if, say, you're fighting in a jungle or in an open desert or on an ice plain or anything where the terrain is relatively open, or you need to be really mobile and jump from cover point to cover point, such as the city street fighting, flak armor is going to be your better bet, because in that type of situation it's going to be better to not be hit at all than to worry about taking the hit in the first place. Neither of these armors is what I would call a universal armor, something that would work regardless of situation. There's no utility to either one. It's either I'm in armor designed for reconnaissance and mobility, or I'm in armor designed that will actually potentially save my life, but I'm gonna have to, you know, run 2 seconds slower on my 40-yard dash.
Well, there we go. The next up as standard Imperial Guard equipment is the 970 Entrenching Tool. Now, while it's primarily intended for filling sandbags, it's a small folding spade which can be used for digging trenches, shoring up earthen mounds, or preparing other defensive structures. It also makes an improvised weapon as well, with many guardsmen believing that a sharpened entrenching tool makes it for a better melee weapon than a standard issue knife.
They're not far off from that. It turns out that the U.S. Army and the British Army actually have the dominant side that you're going to swing with. I.e., if you're right-handed, you get a right-handed entrenching tool. If you're left-handed, you get a left-handed entrenching tool. The only difference being that one side of the spade is sharpened and actually made specifically to hit other human beings with. An entrenching tool is a better item to use for blocking as well, because if you were to use your lasgun to block, say, a blow, and say someone was using a power sword but they didn't quite cut all the way through the lasgun, well, they've destroyed your lasgun now, so even if you survive the melee combat, you no longer have a gun to shoot back with. Whereas using an entrenching tool, as many militaries have discovered, not only gives you more reach than a knife, and it also delivers a hell of a lot more kinetic force on the business end because of the weight factor. It's basically like the difference in swinging a baseball bat at somebody and swinging a mace and swinging a shorthand mace at them. The shorthand mace is going to hurt, but the baseball bat, when it hits the business end, can send your head literally clean off your shoulders. In this case, that's what they're going for. I am a little disappointed that they didn't go for the full Swiss Army knife style entrenching tool, similar to what the Swiss Army, Chinese, and Korean armies use for their entrenching tools, which basically means that their entrenching tools have like can openers on them, can be doubled up as a axe for chopping down trees, They can be used. They have little gears and rivets on them that can be used to take tracks off of tanks for replacement, or used as improvised tools in place of an actual toolkit for, say, building a fortification with nails and hammer, or even mixing concrete.
It's probably because the Adeptus Mechanicus lost the STC for him.
Probably.
I mean, they lost. I mean, come on, let's be honest. The Adeptus Mechanicus lost the STC for a knife, and when two Imperial Guardsmen found it, they gave those two Guardsmen a planet each to rule over as a thank you for finding on how to make a knife.
That's got to be one very special knife.
Standard issue Space Marine combat knife. So that's a machete, but still, it's a knife.
Okay.
So, moving on, we're going to look at the standard issue weapon the Imperial Guard are issued with, which is the trusty lasgun. Now, lasguns are reliable, easy to maintain, and easy to produce. They operate by emitting a beam of focused light. Now, the high amount of energy in the beam causes the immediate surface area of a target to be vaporized in a small explosion, although the power setting itself can be altered from high to low in order to just simply paralyze a target to flat out kill them. Sorry for mumbling there, I don't know why I am. But anyway, they can be recharged in several ways, notably by sunlight or even by throwing it into a fire, even though that can actually damage the weapon itself. And the pack itself can also be overcharged, turning the lasguns into a makeshift grenade. Now, while a tactic only used in last-ditch situations and resulting in the destruction of the weapon, the explosion, however, is powerful enough to crack open the armour of a dreadnought. The weapon itself can also be fitted with a hot shot pack, providing a more powerful shot, which we'll actually be taking a look at later on.
You sure that it's capable of these things, right?
That's what the official law says.
So, the lasgun, the trademark of the Imperial Guard, the reason why most of you are here, and the reason why many of you are about to hate me. For a start, lasguns pack 0 kinetic force, something that all ranged weapons we currently use do have. Instead, the lasguns rely on heat and light for their damage. The weapon has no kinetic stopping power whatsoever and comes out to an actual laser diameter of 3.7 millimeters or 0.145 caliber. This means that the laser is actually 0.8 of a millimeter smaller than a BB fired from a BB gun. The actual size of the wound inflicted is roughly 3.1 millimeters. To illustrate just how tiny that is, the length along my pinky fingernail is 4 millimeters. The length, not the diameter or size of the round, just the length. That means that this literally is firing a shot so tiny that if it does not hit a vital organ, a vein, or something that immediately would cause death, you may not even notice you've been shot.
So you're telling me that this flashlight is actually less powerful than the flashlight?
This flashlight is less powerful than a BB gun. Because I can ramp a BB gun using airsoft guns up to 1,200 force pounds per second and actually punch straight through a chest plate with it. I don't know if a lasgun's even capable of that, because a lasgun is only actually delivering 400. Oh, I did all of this math here to show you guys how this is. So to determine how much firepower a lasgun actually packs, I know that it takes between 16 to 196, depending upon where you shoot, to penetrate from the front to the back of a human skull. Roughly 3.7 kilograms or 88.9 kilograms of force per square millimeter, or force per square meter. This means that it requires between 71 newtons and 871 newtons, or an average of 435 newtons to penetrate a human skull. I did determine that a LASP charge pack would only need to be the size of 2 standard D batteries in order to have enough charges to fire 150 charges worth at 435 newtons or joules of power into someone. So, it is entirely possible that the last pack can carry this many rounds. However, the lasgun itself only effectively delivers 43.5 joules of energy to a target. 1/10 of the average energy needed to penetrate a human skull.
No wonder they're so obsessed with tanks and their standard weapons as this crap.
There is a reason why you need hundreds of them to bring targets down. Because if you don't shoot through the heart, or the lungs, or the brain, you're not going to kill them. More importantly, because it's primarily using heat as its form of damage, the electrical burn instantaneously cauterizes any wound it hits. Meaning that you won't notice you've been shot most of the time because the nerve endings have been completely burned off, and because you're not bleeding, because the wound is instantly sealed by the lasgun itself.
What about the overclocking of the power pack to the point where it makes the weapon explode with enough force to puncture the armor of a dreadnought? How much power would that actually generate?
Overcharging the pack and assuming you could discharge all of the energy all at once, you would get the equivalent explosive force. You've actually asked me a question where I now have to do a little bit of math, but you would get 435 joules times 150 charges. You would get 65,250 joules of energy. Now, with explosive force needed to generate via electrical overload, an electrical overload, on average, reduces its explosive force by 66%, because that much of the electricity is consumed in making the overload happen. So that means we only have 34% of the effective blast, or 22,185 joules of energy is discharged all at once. Knowing all of this, and factoring all of this in, this means that when this goes poop and explodes, it delivers the equivalent force of... this is going to take a little bit of math to convert to newtons, and then convert to force pounds. But let's see. TNT. Explosive. I need to know the equivalent explosive force for... what is this? 1,200 newtons. The equivalent explosive force is roughly... So equivalent explosive force is roughly 1/2 of a megaton of TNT.
Half a megaton.
Half a megaton. Half of a kilogram of dynamite. Excuse me, not a half a megaton, half of a kilogram of dynamite.
I was going to say half a megaton.
No, I stand correct. I was reading the wrong symbol. It's MT, not MG. Half of a milliton, or half of a kilogram of dynamite.
I was going to say, it was like, let's face it, if the guys were carrying miniature nukes with them, they might just keep throwing the lasguns at people, doing more damage.
By correction, that's a little M, not a big M.
Right.
But it's half of a milliton, or half a kilogram of dynamite.
Still does more damage than a standard shot, though, apparently.
It would do significantly more damage than a standard shot, but if it were going to explode with an equivalent force to crack open a dreadnought, you would literally have to press the gun against the dreadnought and then hug the gun, so the explosive force only has one direction to go, into you in the dreadnought.
Bet Slime Arbo could do it.
Quite possibly. But there is apparently hope for the lasgun, because you can overcharge it. And when we get to the overcharge version, you're all going to go, what the hell?
But before we do, we're going to take a look at something with a bit more boom. We're going to look at the grenade launcher, which is one of the special weapons that the Imperial Guard troops can actually have. Now, there's 3 variants of these. We've got the standard Cadian pattern grenade launcher, used by the Cadian shock troopers, a drum-fed weapon with 20 40mm grenades. They have the Mazoa grenade launcher, which is a single-shot version, and the Voss pattern grenade launcher, which carries 6 rounds in a revolving drum. Although it is apparently incredibly inaccurate.
Which oddly enough, is true to life. So the standard grenade launcher is the same equivalent as the Mark 19 we use today. There's absolutely no tangible difference between these two. They actually even have the same rate of fire and the same delivery of explosive force, a 40mm fragmentation grenade. This can be mounted on a tripod, on a light vehicle, on a heavy vehicle, whatever you want to put it on it that could normally mount a machine gun. Just it's a very high caliber machine gun. Effective range is about 200 meters, but you're also looking at a shot dispersion of nearly a meter per 50 meters traveled. So by the time it gets out to 200 meters, it's about 4 meters off target. Then again, with an explosion radius of nearly 10 meters, 4 meters off target is still pretty close, and close enough. The Mazoa pattern grenade launcher is the same exact thing, word for word, as what we see in the M109 grenade launcher that has been used since the Vietnam War. It's a single shot, you pump it in, you fire, and it pumps out a grenade that kind of sounds like a mortar going off. Effectively, it's a direct fire mortar anyway, and it's good for about 100 yards. So long as the enemy is not behind hard cover, it's a quick and dirty instant explosive to use against light troops that anyone can carry and use.
Also known as the Michael Bay gun.
Michael Bay gun. The Voss pattern grenade launcher is apparently copied exactly off of the ICS-190 drum grenade launcher that you often see riot police use to fire tear gas into rioting crowds. The biggest defect here is it's bulky and kind of like the other grenade launchers, you can't carry a shitload of ammunition with you. It's not so much the weight of the ammunition, because each round actually weighs less than a clip or a magazine of standard assault rifle ammunition. It's the size. Each one of these is slightly bigger than your fist, and you're having to carry that around, which means that you can only carry so much of this before it starts to impede your movement to carry more ammunition.
In fairness, this particular pattern of grenade launch is primarily used by drop troops, such as the Elysian Drop Regiment. So you can just imagine a whole bunch of these being dropped behind enemy lines, near an enemy base, a whole bunch of explosions going off and just letting loose with the grenades.
It is extremely effective against light troops. It's also very effective against stopping human wave style attacks. So with, say, the orcs or the Tyranids launching masses of Xenos at you, it would be extremely effective at putting them down. It would also be really effective against the Imperial Guard themselves.
Ironically.
So that is the grenade launcher breakdown, guys. They are actually fairly accurate representations of grenade launchers we use today.
And the best weapon they've got so far.
True.
So we're going to move on to something a bit bigger. The Autocannon. Now the Autocannon is a rapid-firing heavy weapon able to use a wide variety of ammunition, from mass reactive explosives to solid shells. Now these things are big. They're normally mounted on weapon carriages or vehicles because of how heavy they are, and have an extremely high rate of fire with sufficient killing power to be effective against large infantry formations and light armoured vehicles. They are also useful against heavy infantry such as Space Marines, although power armour has been known to stop autocannon rounds.
These autocannons are the same standard autocannons that we, for the most part, there are larger caliber ones, but for the most part the same autocannons we would use with the M2 Bradley and the Warrior armored fighting vehicle used by the United Kingdom Special Forces. Or basically they're big enough that nothing really wants to be in the way of it. It can penetrate armored vehicles occasionally if it hits a weak spot or it gets a nice rear shot at them. It's really good at destroying cover, and it's really good at just tearing people apart, and I mean this in the most literal sense. There are videos on YouTube, please, I'm not telling you to go look them up unless you are prepared for something graphically disturbing, where a M2 Bradley fires a burst at somebody with an RPG and the guy literally just falls in half. These types of autocannons are just straight up direct fire. I want the most basic, beat the crap out of somebody with a 25mm to a 90mm boomstick as I possibly can mount, and that's exactly what you get. The big 90mm versions are kind of the anti-tank versions, if you will, something mounted on, say, I know the Imperial Guard don't use them, but the Space Marine Predator's autocannon is about a 90mm high-velocity anti-armor gun, and the regular autocannon we're talking about here is about 25 to 30mm. It's capable of punching multiple chunks of concrete blocks and keep continuing to travel with the capability of being lethal. In addition to this, if you want to pack it full of explosive charges, you can also pack it full of incendiary rounds and just set stuff on fire. So, it's a pretty realistic, pretty true-to-earth weapon. Unlike what we have next.